I know a lot of you guys may not tune into the Channel 10 Podcast, which you should, channel10podcast.com. My beloved co-host, the almighty AR, is currently on hiatus. I don't know when he's coming back, but, he'll come back when he's ready. So before we get into this episode, the first episode, and I believe in about 8 or 9 months, I just wanted to apologize for that, but I really do appreciate the support. Every so often I will look at the stats, and the stats have been really steady. The listens have been really steady, rather. I really want to thank you guys for that. I appreciate it. And while we've been gone, and after the Arctic has been on hiatus, I've been thinking about ways to really revamp this podcast and to kind of make it better. And so by me making it better, I wanted to incorporate more things that are Wu-Tang. So soon, very soon, I will have a special episode that I think really exemplifies what I mean with that. But with all that being said, I figured that for this new podcast, this new episode for the podcast in such a long time, I figured that we keep things up to date and focus on Raekwon's The Wild album. So with that being said, really this podcast originally was me and the almighty AR talking about different albums and everything like that. That's still going to go on. Talking about Killer Bees, every Wu-Tang album, Wu-Tang solo albums and everything like that. But now I'm going to pretty much have a rotating panel of guests who will come on and talk to me about these different albums. And so for this episode, I have a very special guest. I have Matteo Urella, who is a writer, really dope writer. He has this feature that he does on his Medium page called Profiles, and he interviews all kinds of people from different walks of life, musicians, artists, and he had Dan Lish, who is the creator behind Raekwon's artwork for his most recent album, The Wild. So I figured it'd be a good thing to have Matteo Urella on to really sit down with me and chat a bit about Raekwon's album. So Matteo, how you doing, man?
Good, brother. I appreciate being on again. First of all, obviously, congratulations on all your personal and professional success. And as we talked about last time, I'm a huge Wu fan and Raekwon fan and everything, and a fan of yours. So I appreciate, you having me on again. I feel like it's an honor, and congratulations to everything you're doing, man. You're setting the bar high for a lot of people. So thank you for having me on again.
Oh, no doubt, man. And thank you, man. Your dope interviews. I mean, with your profiles, you've interviewed people like Rass Kass, Bronze Nazareth, to keep everything Wu-Tang here, and you've also interviewed Hell Razah also. And when it came to you interviewing Dan Lish, for you at least, what was like the biggest takeaway from that interview?
I guess the biggest thing for me is that I thought it was pretty awesome the way, and getting to know him a little bit in the Wild behind the scenes project a little bit. The biggest part was, it seems like Raekwon is really not above doing anything himself. He basically said Raekwon hit him up on Instagram and basically said, "Yo, this is Raekwon. I wanna, I wanna see, get this guy to do my cover art." And I just thought that was really dope, because everything I see about Raekwon or heard, or like I said, getting to know this project, he doesn't seem like that. He doesn't seem egotistical or arrogant or above doing anything or like a superstar. And just that goes to show, because Dan Lish, super dope artist and fairly well known, but not necessarily, a crazy known artist. And so Raekwon just found his work, had a vision, and contacted him. And I think that's how you get things done. And I thought that was just really cool for a guy who, I don't think, in terms of Raekwon, I don't think he gets the notoriety he deserves, even as hard as that might be to believe. I think it's still awesome that he just has a creative mind to say, this is what I want, and I'm going to make it happen. And I think that's probably partly why he's been able to stay so successful in the game so long.
Yeah, and this is like one of the things that I did want to talk about before we actually delve into the album, and it's Raekwon's like this new vigor that he has, and also this independent thing that he's been on for quite a while. I think this is like his 4th independent album, through his Ice Water Records. That's been he has distribution through different means. I think with this one it's Caroline. I think for this one, and I think his last album was probably EMI. But yeah, like he really hits the ground running, and then like through all of like most of his most recent interviews regarding the Wild, he talks about just still being out there, getting his name out there, going to different places in the industry and connecting with different kinds of people. And I think that the Wild really embodies his work ethic that he does have, as an independent artist and that kind of grind, in which he does admit that, it has his its strengths and his weaknesses at the same time.
Yeah, and I think he approaches it very, again, maybe for better or worse, but in general, he approaches things very business-like. So he says, I got to get a product out there to keep my name hot. He does collaborations with people that maybe are a little bit off the wall, but he's doing it to get his name into different circles. Case in point, I was just reading a month or so ago, there's a football player named Raekwon McMillan. And he just got drafted, by the Dolphins, and I thought it was so crazy because he said, basically my parents named me after Raekwon the chef, and it's just crazy to see the influence that, Wu-Tang or Raekwon himself has had on now the world, in the Wild. I think you look at the features list, I mean, it's low, but he's got Lil Wayne, CeeLo, and G-Eazy, amongst the I think 5 or 6 on there, and you're talking about CeeLo, who does, pop culture television, Lil Wayne, who has a huge cult following himself, and then G-Eazy, who's pretty popular for whatever reason. So I think it's pretty, I don't know, I just think Raekwon, his influence is still going strong 20-something years later,
I mean, it's amazing to see it, and also I think that Raekwon and he thinks this too, that he's kind of like taking the helm of the Wu brand, at least when it comes to music. At least I guess maybe regarding quality and being more out there. Ghostface, he did that for almost 10 years, and now it seems to me that Raekwon is doing it. And it just amazes me, like his business acumen, and I'm not sure if his I was looking at like his management a little bit and just like the different pieces that he has, and I know that his brother I think Kay or Kareem manages him, and then he has like a whole slew of other people who are kind of connected to this Wu-Tang empire and who do certain things, which is really dope. So he kind of in a way keeps it literally all in the family when it comes to Wu-Tang, and when it comes to his his own biological family, and how he keeps these things together. And with that being said, this is also the first, I think Raekwon's first album where he doesn't have like a Wu-Tang feature per se or any kind of Wu-Tang production.
That to me caught me really off guard, for I guess bittersweet, because as a longtime Wu fan, passionate Wu fan, that was almost always like the glimmer of hope that whenever these strains go out in public and the feuds go out in public, and then a solo member releases an album, there's always some sort of Wu connection that brings it back to the family, and it kind of keeps the hope alive. And I don't think the hope's broken. It's just for this album there was no Wu-Tang connection, and me personally, I think that was a mistake, only because I don't know about personally, but sonically, I think it's always good to have a Wu connection, because it's similar to how you and I were talking about Bone Thugs. I mean, the magic that Wu can create when they're together is unparalleled. So it might not be a RZA beat, it might not even be a Ghost verse because he's worked so much with them. But if you threw Master Kill on, or even a Killer B, or even productions from Fourth Disciple or something, just to bring it, not just for the reason, not just to say I got it, but because they make magic together. I mean, me personally, I'm not a fan of a lot of the features he had on this album, even though there's not many. So I don't, and some of the beats, the beats are all good, but I think he could have had a Bronze beat, or, I mean, who's to say? It's easy to say in retrospect, but I'm always championing Wu-Tang and the magic they make. So I personally wish that he had some sort of Wu connection on this.
Yeah. Well, all right, well, we want to get into, Wu-Tang. Well, at least when it comes to the Killer Bees, he kind of technically had someone. He had, I'm pretty sure this is Sugar Bang Bang, who was the guy singing on all these skits throughout the album. Intro, outro. Well, not the intro, but in the outro, and then I think 2 skits throughout the album. So that's a Wu-Tang feature right here, I guess.
No, you're right. It's funny. I didn't. I was just thinking today, because I was, thinking about this today, and I was about this, being able to be on your show, and I was like, man, I got to figure out what's up with these skits, because there has to be a story to it, and the voice sounded a little familiar, but I would never even, until I researched it. So yeah, you're right, that absolutely is, and so I stand corrected, and I apologize.
I mean, well, if we're good, I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys know who Sugar Bang Bang or Sugar Bang is. I mean, I'm just going to say Sugar Bang Bang, but it seems like whenever I look through the internet, some people just call him Sugar Bang. But yeah, like I was trying to figure out who it was because the voice sounded familiar. It sounded like someone from like an older Raekwon album. So Sugar Bang Bang, he's like a killer bee. He sings. I believe he was on the Swarm for maybe about I think a couple of songs. He's on the Ghost Dog soundtrack, and he was on Only Built for Cuban Links 2 on Raekwon's Cold Outside, where he pretty much I feel like he's on the majority of that song actually just singing. And for those of you who are interested, he has an album entitled Fire, which came out in 2005 and supposedly RZA produced. Apparently the album is kind of hard to find. I was looking on Discogs, and I think the last time the album or someone bought the album, it was like for $45-$50. But you can go ahead on YouTube. It's all on there. I skimmed through it a little bit. It's interesting album just to nonetheless, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe you can count that as a Wu-Tang feature now. When it comes to the interviews that he's been doing, which I think that when it comes to Raekwon, I mean, maybe everyone in the clan, but particularly with Raekwon, especially because the kind of history he's had recently with feuding with RZA when it came to like the past two albums, 8 Diagrams and A Better Tomorrow. People seem to be really interested in asking him about another Wu-Tang album or just his views on the clan, and then people got all up in arms because of him not having a Wu-Tang feature or anything like that. And I really think they just kind of like a lot of the interviews that he had with some of these publications, they just weren't that good because they just kept focusing on this this Wu-Tang aspect and trying to find something wrong with the clan, or him trying to figure out if he feels there's something wrong with the clan or something like that, which of course he didn't say. And so it just kind of strikes me odd, but I don't know. I guess we can probably count Sugar Bang Bang as a Wu-Tang feature.
Well, we can count it. I just I think the absence was pronounced, and maybe that's on purpose. But I mean, I don't want to speak for Raekwon, but certainly I hope he wasn't trying to prove his worth as a solo artist, because he's X amount of albums deep, and he's a legend and revered just for his own body of work and his own influence on the game. Never mind Wu, but I'm a Wu fan first, not necessarily against Ray, but I'm just a Wu fan, and so I would have loved to hear something from them. But it's a good album. It's a very good album, regardless.
Yeah, it is. Well, he had, let's see, production-wise, I know he had some in-house producers. So one of his in-house, well, I think he says that he's an in-house producer. I think is Frankie G. He had Dame Grease, Justice League, and some other people. So, I mean, yeah, I think I agree. I think that like the beats, they weren't bad. I think some I like more than others, like with I guess every album, of course. But and I think like you, I wasn't the biggest fan of every feature on the album. I think the best feature on the album is probably CeeLo on the Marvin track, which I think is really good.
Well, me personally, I think Marvin is one of the best Raekwon songs ever, and one of the best, I guess you could say, Wu-Tang affiliated songs. I think it's an amazing song, and that for me it kind of pronounced my gripes with the album, because overall I'm a big fan. I was impressed. It was a lot better the more I listened to it. But then for me, I thought it started off super strong, and it really peaked with Marvin, and it was super creative and just a very touching, great storytelling song. And then from there, I personally thought the album lost its creativity a little bit. It was a lot of drugs and guns and sex talk, but Raekwon, and that's fine because he's a master of it, but he's almost 47 and he's super, super creative. So I was a little disappointed to see it start off with such a high peak sonically and creatively, and then it didn't necessarily, it was a lot of the same topics that we know he has the wordplay, we know he has the vocabulary, and he's better than a lot of people for many, many years. So I would have liked more substance. And again, I hate to gripe because overall it's a good album, but I just thought Marvin is the best, one of the best records he's ever made, and I wish there was more creativity throughout the album. With that being said, yeah, certainly I like it a lot.
I think, I mean, yeah, I mean, I kind of feel for Raekwon because, you know, ever since like Immobilarity, you know, when that album came out and the criticism that he received for it, you know, really trying to like go away from that kind of mafioso route and, you know, try to, you know, become more of a, you know, less of a drug dealing kind of rapper or whatever like that. And, you know, I feel like he had to like work his way up, you know. So think about the Vatican mixtapes and how it seemed to me like he almost had to like try to like, you know, kind of find himself a little bit when he was, you know, doing all those Vatican mixtapes and stuff like that to like really come out to really finish, you know, Cuban Links 2, and to come out with a lot of these other decent albums, you know, Shaolin versus Wu-Tang, which I think is like his second best album, you know, aside, you know, from Cuban Links. And everything like that. So I kind of feel for him but I do think that he strikes a better balance with this album, whereas he's more or less like reminiscing about some things, and I think having stories from the third person and just, you know, having them for the sake of stories, but he can go back to, I guess, Lex Diamonds. Lex Diamonds was, I think, a bit more from what I can remember of it. It's been a long time since I listened to it, but that's I really like that album too.
It seemed like for some reason people were still, it was almost like a LeBron James thing where people for Raekwon were still saying like, can he do it? And you're like, if you look at it, he's been doing it. So I think, you know, he had several albums in the last couple of years that I thought were great. I thought Shaolin vs. Wu-Tang was great. Cuban Links 2 was great. Fly International, I can't say it was great, but I thought it was very good, and I thought that was the first time, maybe not the first time, but, you know, he basically on that album was like, I'm making Sonic crossovers. He had Ghost on it. He had a little bit of a Wu touch on it, but overall it was kind of like, you know, featured French Montana and A$AP Rocky and Snoop Dogg. It was kind of more of a pop culture album, and I thought it was very, very good. One of my more favorite albums of that year. So I see him trying to make the attempt to try to distance himself from the mathematics and from the 5% and from the kind of the things that Wu's known for. And overall, he's killing it. But this album, to me, like, for me personally, this album was very, very good. So I'm probably sound like I'm disparaging it, but I preferred, you know, Shaolin vs. Wu-Tang or Cuban Links 2 personally over this.
Yeah. And one other element that I kind of saw every so often in some of these interviews that he's done was this notion of a Cuban Links 3, which I wasn't fully aware that he was like really thinking about, but he actually is thinking about another Cuban Links 3. So, what do you think about him doing another Cuban Links?
Well, it's tough because I think that he's so creative and his chemistry with Ghostface is so well pronounced, and obviously the Wu-Tang chemistry is so well pronounced. I thought Cuban Links 1, obviously one of the best albums of all time. Cuban Links 2 was one of the best albums of that decade, me personally, in terms of hip-hop, because it touched everything. It had an incredible amount of features, incredible production, not just Wu, but Dre and Dilla, Pete Rock, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But so on the one hand, I think he could do that no problem with his eyes closed, especially if he took his time and didn't do it with his eyes closed and put some time into it. On the other hand, I get a little finicky when whether they're my favorite or whether they're guys I don't even listen to, you know, rappers do kind of when they revisit projects. You know, I know The Game came out with Documentary 2 and Nas did Stillmatic, which was a dope album. So sometimes they're great, but I don't always understand the idea of revisiting something you've already done. And not to get off topic, but that's the reason why I'm a huge one of the reasons why I'm a huge Kanye fan, because regardless of any negativity, artistically, he speaks so honestly to where he's at in life and what he's doing and what he's feeling, and he doesn't revisit projects or revisit sounds or sonics or collaborations. He just does what he's doing at the time, and I think that's kind of the mark of a true artist, is your expression at that point in life. So I'm kind of a little against revisiting projects because you should just let them stand, but again, to kind of hedge my bets, I think Cuban Links 1 and 2 are amazing, so he could do that and it would probably be dope.
One day you guys will hear my views on Cuban Links 2. We'll say that for the episode, but I don't think that needs to be. I mean, I'm not saying that if he did a Cuban Links 3 wouldn't be. I think overall I like Cuban Links 2, but I'm with you. I don't really think you got to do all this kind of stuff and he kind of made like not like a fad, but he made it like a thing, because you think of like CNN, the War Report 2, which was released on Raekwon's label. So I guess he motivated CNN, Capone and Noriega to go ahead and do a follow up to their 1997 classic, which actually I don't think I've listened to it. I should probably do that. But when I want to touch a bit more on you talking about Ray's age and stuff like that, and and stuff like that, because lately people in the clan have been doing other things. So, obviously RZA has been doing his Hollywood thing, and GZA has been, on the lecture circuit, going to Harvard and everything like that. And Raekwon, he does talk about that. He talks about the lanes that people in the clan have, and that, which is always amazing to me and so interesting, is that, if someone does some good within the clan, just individually, it just reflects good on the entire clan as a whole, in which it does. So it's interesting for me to see, rather, that you have RZA doing his thing, you got GZA, you have Inspector Deck, and I feel like he's found like a second life as with Czarface, with 7L and Esoteric, which I think those albums are pretty dope. And then you have Raekwon, who's still kind of holding that mantle, on more of a commercial level, getting features on, I guess people ranging from like a 2 Chainz to Kanye West, since you just brought him up. And, I think it's really good. And then you have Ghostface. Ghostface, I feel like he's been doing what he's been wanting to do for the longest time, actually making albums with like full bands. So like full soul bands. So I think that when it comes to the clan, maybe there always has to be that one person, 1 or 2 people who they're just focusing on music. And it seems to me that Raekwon, at least, he's embracing his artistry. It seems like he's taking like a lot of pride in his artwork now. I mean, he always has, but I feel like it's a bit more compared to other albums. Like, so you have this album, and then with Fly International Luxurious Art, I always got to say the entire title. He had like a little rollout for that album cover too, if I recall properly, like on Instagram, the same way he did with The Wild. So I think in general, I think everyone like is really finding their little niche, and I think Raekwon is slowly but surely, I think he's already carved it out, but he's like perfecting it a bit more, I would say. Perhaps. Yeah, no, I would definitely agree, and I think he's having a lot of crossover success on different features, like you mentioned. I know he did a Justin Bieber record, and he's and I know Ghost gets looked at. Ghost, like when Ghost did the Good Music feature, people said, "Oh my God, the verse of the year." So it's a little bit more revered. Where Ray's kind of like sliding in, like, I'm not. Don't put me on a pedestal yet. I'm still amongst you. I'm still kind of putting out product on a regular basis, and so I respect that a lot, and I respect the fact that even if he's distancing himself from the Wu-Tang sound, he's still Wu-Tang all day, you know what I mean? So that never goes away. I guess just to circle back a little bit, it got me thinking when you said CNN, it got me thinking of one of my favorite rappers, who's AZ, and so I was reading, okay, he's doing Do or Die too, and then I started thinking about Method Man, and he just did what did he do? Tikal 2? I think he released Tikal 2 last year. And it's just like, I don't know, some of these people are so super creative that it's just like, instead of revisiting a project that happened at a moment of time, keep it moving. And so to bring it back to The Wild, and how I got interested in Dan Lish is because I think that just showed Raekwon, like you said, taking his artistry a little bit, or a lot more serious and a lot more pride in it, down to the cover art, down to a limited amount of features. I think if you look at sonically the song, like for instance, You Hear Me, that kind of blew me away. It was kind of like a not a trap record, but it was a different flow and a different sound for him. So he's still experimenting and growing. The song Marvin's are kind of a different kind of conceptual for him. So I think he's still growing, and I think he's actually still growing and finding his footing, and that's kind of awesome to see, because or a guy like Ghost is still growing and taking chances with Bad Not Good and Adrian Young, and doing a lot of projects that are a little bit off the wall, but he's still trying, and he's still doing he's kind of still doing it fearlessly. And RZA is super fearless when it comes to his artistry. So I think the spirit of Wu
is well intact. As long as those guys keep kind of doing what they feel in their heart is what they should be doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So in general, I think I feel like we agree that Marvin is like the best song off this album.
Yeah, for me, I mean, best song on the album, best song, one of the best songs of his career, certainly one of the best. So I guess you could call it a solo record. You know, there's no verse features, and I just was hoping. You know, I know J. Cole did the kind of the storytelling, and Nas did kind of the storytelling with Rakim, and I think Ray just killed it kind of out of nowhere, for no reason other than the fact that Marvin Gaye's a legend. But what killed it, and CeeLo, I mean, CeeLo's a little bit unheralded when it comes to verse feature, chorus features. I know he did one on Common's album, One Day It All Makes Sense, and he killed that. I forget what it's called, but I think it was about Jesus or something. But it used to be one of my favorite songs in high school. But definitely Marvin's my favorite, and I don't know if we're going there, but Purple Brick Road, man, shouldn't have happened.
I mean, the beat is cool. I could have most definitely lived without that song. G-Eazy's verse, I think it was just if it was just like Raekwon, it would have been okay. And, the title could have been something different.
I don't know, it's so jarring, but again, to bring it back to the Justin Bieber feature, he had G-Eazy on his album, and I know he had Lil Wayne, and Lil Wayne has a lot of respect from a lot of people, and G-Eazy really doesn't, but G-Eazy, goes on sold out tours, and so I think it's a smart business move for Raekwon to feature on Justin Bieber or to have G-Eazy on his own album and then have Andrew Day on, because he's kind of getting his name into a lot of circles that either A, don't know him, or B, only know him as Wu-Tang, and he's kind of saying, no, like, check out my work, and I respect, I think the decision making he's making. I just don't, the product I don't really care for, but who cares, because he's doing his thing, and I can't fault him for that.
Yeah, and when it comes to the business aspect, it seems to me that he's really pushing this artist that he does have on Ice Water Records, Pure, who is relatively new. He has him on the album. You look on his SoundCloud, on Raekwon, on Ice Water Records SoundCloud page. I think they just recently came out with like a song maybe some days ago, and they have some other songs together. I think in the past 3 months, several of them on the SoundCloud page. You can go and check out. And so anyway, what did you think of having Pure on the album, like on the song Eminem?
Well, for me, I mean, if Pure is his guy, and I know he's kind of between Ice Water and back in the Wu days, he's not afraid to put his own people on, and I champion that, and I respect that, and he should. With that being said, that and Purple Brick Road, the only 2 songs I don't like at all. I really I dislike them, and I thought Eminem didn't really make sense to me, to be honest. It really I didn't understand the concept. I didn't understand the rhyme patterns, because there really weren't rhyme patterns. They were just speaking with alliteration, but it didn't make sense to me, and it wasn't necessarily conceptual like they were telling a story. It was just alliteration that didn't necessarily even rhyme. And when the dude Pure said, peace to Nova Scotia, I almost laughed because it just didn't it's just very forced. So I just didn't understand the song, and not to mention, I don't really care for the beat or nothing about it I liked. It was kind of like that and Purple Brick Road. And for me, the skits, those 3 or 4 things kind of all stalled what overall could have been a really solid, efficient, album. And it doesn't mean it didn't take away to the point where I dislike it or anything. Like I said, I think it's a really good album, and I was impressed how much I liked it, but I didn't understand anything. How did you feel? Maybe I'm just being super, super picky.
Well, when I first listened to the album, I liked it quite a bit. And it was because, I was like a little let down with Fly International Luxurious Art. And so I was just happy. I was happy for Ray to go back to, his, what he usually does, rather than, kind of, have more of a commercial appeal with it, with an album. Which, I mean, I wasn't particularly mad at Fila per se. It just wasn't for me. I'm sure that maybe it probably helped him out when it came to, moving around the industry and being independent. But in general, I don't know. I feel like maybe he could have picked some other beat makers. I'm not saying like Dane Grease. I'm saying maybe he should have reached out to, I don't know, some Alchemists, some Havocs, or something like that. to really put like a lot of these pieces together. Even like a Bronze Nazareth. I mean, you had Bronze Nazareth on Shaolin versus Wu-Tang. I think it was Butter Knobs, right? And that song was really dope. But it seems to me in his interviews too for this album, he also mentioned wanting to do something different, like you said, and I guess in so many ways kind of shying away from this so-called Wu-Tang sound, which actually this is something I wanted to get into with you. And me and Arte, we've been talking about this notion of a Wu-Tang sound, whatever this is. And when we think of a Wu-Tang sound, it doesn't really involve RZA. It's really like Fourth Disciple and like Bronze Nazareth and True Master, like people who really make up like the Wu elements. Because if you think of this Wu-Tang sound, Wu-Tang albums don't really have this sound, or do you think something different?
Well, that's a great question, and something I'll have to spend more time thinking. But in general, I think I can see how RZA gets, I guess you could say, credit. Like when you started speaking about that, the first song that came to my head was Scary Hours, and I think that to me embodies the RZA sound and the early Wu-Tang sound, which is a lot of strings, very orchestral, usually some sort of soul sample or some scratched up vocals. But his artistry and his growth has been major. So I don't know the last time RZA had something that would be called the Wu-Tang sound. Even on his Birth of a Prince album, A Day to God 1,000 Years is a bronze beat, and that was probably my favorite beat on the album. And all the Bobby Digital albums don't really have any sort of sound like that. So I think it's hard to say, because I think at this point, especially with so much time passed, I don't think there is a Wu-Tang sound you can contribute to RZA because he's kind of gone away from it so much. But I can see how people would, when they first came out and his sonics were first on the map, I mean, they were pretty cutting edge. So I think at the time you could say, well, that's the Wu-Tang sound. But then once he kind of put on the Wu elements and people like Bronze or Mathematics or whatever, then they kind of took a little bit more of a formula, with the sped up vocals and orchestral and kind of dusty and everything. And I think he kind of passed that mantle probably gladly, because, like I said, he kind of went off and is still exploring his own artistry.
Yeah. I mean, because if I had to like pick something off of a Wu-Tang album that has like the Wu-Tang sound, I would probably pick Scary Hours too. Actually, I think I mentioned that maybe somewhere in one of these episodes for this podcast. But mainly like Mathematics and Fourth Disciple. So like Mathematics, like Cobra Clutch. I think he made that beat. And I'm trying to think of like one, I don't know, like damn near like the entire like Killer Army album, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, like Fourth Disciple, like I feel like Fourth Disciple is like the ultimate embodiment of the Wu-Tang sound. Just from like Sons of Man, Fourth Disciple, Sons of Man and Killer Army and everything like that. So Pure, because Pure sounds familiar. So Pure is from like the old Ice Water.
See, Ice Water was like, it was with Immobilarity and Lex Diamond that I was almost like a little disappointed in Ray. Like, I know it was many, many years ago, but I was almost like, it was like, I was like, as a kid, I was super drawn to kind of like the very scary elements of Wu and of Bring the Pain video from Meth and the old Wu videos that were just on public access and that were super scary. And so when Ray did Immobilarity and Lex Diamond, which I now really appreciate, at the time I was kind of like salty about them because they weren't threatening. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of didn't really investigate Ice Water like that, because I was kind of like, Ray disappoints me. He's on his own on this one, and it took me a couple years to kind of like circle back,
Yeah, that Ice Water album, I think, which came out pretty much right after like the Lex Diamonds joint. It was a pretty interesting album. I think like 3-6 was on that album if I can recall properly. But yeah, I'm really just going. I have notes here, but I'm just going off like the top of my head with that. I don't fully remember. I think 3-6 was on that album actually. But eventually, because pretty much like you had like American Cream Teen, and then it just kind of turned into Ice Water in so many words.
And again, maybe I've lost touch or lost track, but it just didn't make any sense to me. The song, like it just didn't make. I just didn't understand what they were going for, because I didn't, and it's smack dab in the middle of the album. And And for me, Justice League and Dame Grease are the two producers that I think are the most well known on the album. And for me personally, those are the two songs that I dislike the most. So, or really the only two that I dislike. So that was a little disappointing when you look at the track list, but that's just my own personal, whatever.
Right, no doubt. Now, I guess in closing, is there any other song that stood out to you?
I think, like we said, Marvin's the best. I think You Hear Me's right up there. This Is What It Comes To, that started off the album super strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I liked all of those. I mean, My Corner I liked a lot, but I thought Lil Wayne kind of, that's who he is now, and it was like shades of the greatness of Lil Wayne, so it was a little disappointing. Like I said, I just really don't care for, I think Visiting Hour, that's the one where he's being reflective, right, and talking about, like, being a grown man. I think Visiting Hour with Andrew Day, that's the one, like, I'll write you a letter, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like, cause I think that was when like Can't You See was like him reminiscing also. So I'm pretty sure like one like between those.
So I like Visiting Hour a real lot. I thought that was the second strongest. And then for me a little bit, it got a little bit formulaic. The Rain, Crown of Thorns, kind of sound the same. They don't really stand out in my head. Purple Brick Road, I thought fairly terrible because of G-Eazy. And then You Hear Me kind of finishes the album super strong. But I mean it's 16 tracks. You had I think 3 or 4 skits. And then for me, 2 songs that were pretty bad. So for me personally, and I'm nobody, but for me, if it was 10 or 11 songs like Master Killer's last 2 projects were, then you're looking at a super efficient, super enjoyable, like playbackable record. Not that this isn't. It's just a little heavy considering there's only 3 or 4 features and like 4 or 5 skits, which are, for me, they're just, you skip right through them,
Yeah. Yeah. I think Marvin's the strongest. I mean, I like Nothing. I like Can't You See. Crown of Thorns was okay. You Hear Me. I think I listened to the album so far, like at least today, outside of like how I've been listening to it throughout since it's been out since March. I don't know. I keep going back and forth about You Hear Me. Like one time I like it, and then I hear it again, like, oh, I think this is cool, or then I'm like, I don't really mess with it. So it's kind of up in the air, but in general, I think that the album starts out really strong. Sugar Bang Bang, being on these skits, I wasn't mad at him, but I could have lived without him too, and the other, the intro, and everything like that. I mean, yeah. So if you just would have shaved that off, then you would have had a really solid album, really just focused on like the beginning. The first half of the album would have been a really dope album. So yeah, but I think overall we agree that this is a good album. It's a good album in the sense, when it comes to Wu-Tang at least, that it's a good showing for the clan, as Raekwon being a representative, and I think it's just a good album overall. And then just when you just think of his him being an independent artist and like his grind, getting the Lil Waynes and the G-Eazys of the world onto his album and stuff like that is really it's really good, just for the W overall and just for, Raekwon as an artist. And we are seeing, Raekwon grow as an artist from, Fila to now and different things that he's been doing, switching up his delivery every so often, going out and getting different beats that we're not used to like hearing him on, which is always something that I think every artist, should do, and I guess it can be a daunting task, especially if you have a particular kind of bass like Raekwon and the Wu has. So, nonetheless, I think I give the album a thumbs up.
Yeah, absolutely thumbs up. And for me as a fan, I will always rather the artists that I listen to. I'd always rather them take chances and obviously succeed but fail rather than just stay in the lane that they're very comfortable in. And a guy like Ray, who has a business mind, could have just easily pushed out product that's the same 10 or 12 Wu-Tang sounds with a Ghost feature here and there or a Chic Loots feature. So I definitely give him a lot of credit for going, testing himself, trying out new things, being so heavily invested in the rollout, the cover, the product, the beat selection, and not necessarily sleeping through it. I think he sounds, on most of this album, he sounds energetic and motivated and reflective and not trying to be something he's not. The parts that disappoint me are just things that are swings and misses, and they could be somebody else's favorite song. So obviously it doesn't matter. But in general, I'd much rather him or anybody that I really, really care for artistically, try and grow and put out things that they don't even know if it's going to work, rather than put out something they know that's going to work and just keep putting that out every year, and you get the same stale product. So major credit, like you said, especially as an independent artist, to take those chances and to put on people like the in-house beat makers or like pure, people who aren't that well established, and give them a big platform to kind of springboard their own careers. So I think he's making the right moves. He's in the right direction. And he's still putting out high quality music with Wu or without Wu. So I can't wait. Just like when Fila came out, I can't wait for the next Raekwon project, because again, I think he's one of the most slept on. I think he's a legend. Doesn't get the status he deserves, probably because nobody in Wu does, in my opinion. But I can't wait for his next project, because he sounds like a young, motivated, guy who's very relevant in the game.
All right. Well, folks, there you have it. If you haven't listened to Raekwon's The Wild, please go ahead and do that. Me and Matteo, we both agree it's a good album that you will listen to. I think from here on out, I think it's a good addition to Raekwon's extensive catalog between his EPs, his mixtapes, and his official albums. So with that being said, Matteo, go ahead and plug all your social media in and everything like that, if you will.
Oh, I appreciate it, brother. So yeah, if anybody's interested, you can read anything I'm writing over on Medium at my name for everything is just at Matteo Urella, Matteourella, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Medium. Anything anybody's ever interested in, anything I've ever wrote, I really am appreciative. And while I have the chance, brother, I just want to thank you again. It's always a pleasure. You're super knowledgeable, and I love to talk about Wu-Tang or hip hop, especially with somebody who's passionate like you. So it's an honor to be on the show again. Much congratulations and blessings on your success, brother. And hopefully, the sky's the limit for you and for the show, because again, the world needs more passionate hip hop fans that are well versed and well educated, and you're at the forefront. So I appreciate it.
Oh man, no doubt, man. I really thank you and appreciate you for saying that. And please, guys, please go ahead and check out Matteo's profiles. It's really dope. Check out his Bronze Nazareth interview. For whatever reason, I was kind of shocked. The Bronze Nazareth interview was actually one of the more popular. The Bronze Nazareth episode that we did on the Great Migration was one of the more popular episodes for the Wu-Tang Podcast so far. So if you really want to have a better understanding of that album, please go ahead and check that out. Check out the Dan Lish interview that Matteo did, which is really dope, to get a better understanding of Raekwon's approach to the wild, especially with the album cover and Raekwon's artistry overall. So with that being said, please check us out at WuTangPodcast.com. Please go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. I know a lot of you guys are listening on SoundCloud, but please go ahead and subscribe. We are back. We're going to have more episodes, and we're going to have Matteo back to probably get into some really deep Killer Bees albums. And of course, if we don't come out with an episode for a while for the Wu-Tang Podcast, 9 times out of 10 you can check us out at Channel 10 Podcast, channel10podcast.com. Hit us up on Twitter at Channel 10 Pod. I keep the Twitter and everything like that pretty updated, so if you want to reach out to me, hit me up at channel10podcast@gmail.com or WuTangPodcast@gmail.com. Whatever suits you, just hit me up. Let us know what you want us to sit around and talk about. I'm down for that. I'm more or less interested right now, at least, in Killer Bees albums. So if you have, if you want to hear about some Holocaust, some War Cloud, I'm more than happy to do that. The Killer Bees, it's extensive, man. There's so many goddamn albums, man. Like Sugar Bang Bang's album, man. 2005, I can do that. There's so many things that we can do here, because the Wu-Tang catalog is so vast, including the Killer Bees. So please reach out to me, let me know. With all that being said, we're out. Peace, and thanks a lot.
I'd like to thank the gentleman from Wu-Tang for that clarification. And peace to you as well.